2021 was a very good year for Hell Let Loose. Not only was the game majorly successful on PC, it seems to have had an incredibly good release on console, and ended up having its IP bought out by the guys over at Team 17 for a very impressive price point. This is a franchise that's doing well and has a very big 2022 ahead of it. By the end of 2021, Hell Let Loose had released the half-tracks, the Panzer IV, the US Trench Gun, the FG-42, and a sweeping array of fixes and bug changes all on PC. And of course, in Hell Let Loose, the PC version of the game tends to get things before the console version, and the console version is updated once it's stable and moved over and ported over to the platform. There was also new uniform DLC additions and unlockable uniforms as well added to the game. But what a lot of people don't know is that Hell Let Loose has had a lot of content planned for this game before the acquisition of the IP by Team 17. The intention was to bring the British forces, including 2 Operation Market Garden maps, the Canadian forces, including 2 Falaise Pocket maps, and the Japanese forces, including 2 Pacific Theater maps. So lots of different factions being added to the game, including different settings, different weaponry, and different vehicles, all coming together in Hell Let Loose, and this will probably take place over 2022 and 2023. And in 2022, they're saying that they're going to reach PC and console parity, meaning that updates for PC and console will deploy at the same time, although there will be no cross-platform or anything of that demeanor, except between, of course, PlayStation and Xbox, which already exists. Now, based on what we've seen from the acquisition by Team 17, it appears that Hell Let Loose is going to stop active development, I would guess, in and around mid to late 2023. Meaning that we've probably got the British and one other faction coming, I would say this year, with the British dropping in early 2022, maybe the Canadian faction of something that demeanor dropping in late 2022, and then probably I would hazard to guess the Pacific dropping in 2023. And we know that none of this is going to be locked behind a complete paywall. We know that Hell Let Loose offers cosmetic options as a form of paid content, but we also know that they're going to be offering future expansion as paid DLCs, which I think has been quite confusing for some people, considering that the Eastern Front has always been a free update and there's never been talk of that being a paid expansion. But that's kind of changed and the narrative around that has shifted a little bit. I don't really know whether or not the British and other factions were always proposed to be paid DLCs, or if it was content that was coming to the game and nobody ever clarified if it was going to be a paid expansion, something that was part of the game, or something that you'd have to get access to. But it isn't going to divide the community. Effectively, when the British launches and other factions launch as well, you will be able to play on those maps in those settings, but unless you buy the paid expansion, my presumption is that you won't get access to all the weaponry. Now, other games have done this as well, and effectively what happens is that you can basically play as a basic rifleman and nothing else. But if you buy the expansion, which I imagine for Hell Let Loose will probably be like 20 quid tops, if that, probably 15 really, you'll be able to get access to all of those weapons and use the rest of them across the classes. Now, I should clarify that the actual method in which you'll be getting access to these DLCs hasn't been confirmed yet. My speculation, of course, is that you will just use a basic rifleman, and I think that's probably the easiest route that they're going to go for that has been established in other games, and that's something they've alluded to, but I don't think it's going to be anything too cumbersome or too radical. It's good that we won't see player base splitting to access these DLCs to a certain degree, and I think that's something that people can get behind. Generally speaking, I think the introduction of paid DLC is going to be something that will be well received, so long as the game maintains its regular updates of base content and just general performance of the game. I don't think people are going to have a huge issue with it. There are loads of people like myself who have played Hell Let Loose for hundreds of hours or thousands of hours even, and many of us even didn't pay full price for the official game and got it on sale on Steam. As a product, Hell Let Loose is one of those games that I actually don't really mind spending money on, and I don't think many other people will mind too, especially those on console. There seems to be some people on PC who have kind of kicked back against the idea and say that it's a bad idea, even though it won't necessarily split them, but for me personally, I think it's not that big a deal. Personally speaking, I don't really mind the paid DLC setup. I know there's been some kickback by people on it online, but to be honest with you, these games don't last very long without ongoing financial support. Hardcore shooters are a niche category of FPS title. They are a game that very rarely is as successful as Hell Let Loose or Squad, and if you don't continue providing monetary income for it, then you're not going to continue to get new content. If you want lots of expansions and you want these things coming to the game, developers have to work a job and they have to be paid for order to do that. And I'm honestly okay with that. It doesn't bother me. I'm glad there is future expansions coming to this game. If these expansions are like 10 to 20 pounds, it's not really a big deal. Of course, if they start charging like 30, 40 pounds for an expansion, then I'll definitely be raising some eyebrows. If you look around the rest of the industry, Postscriptum has effectively died out with content due to some issues they seem to have over the dev team over there. Other hardcore shooters don't produce as much content or don't have as much content planned, and the only game that does maintain a similar level of content whilst not charging people for it is Squad. But the difference is that OWI have a military branch of OWI which sells simulation training software and actively works with places like the US military. So, you know, there's a good revenue stream from that even if Squad isn't necessarily selling 100% of the time, OWI is making a fair amount of kickback from working on the military side of things. If I recall correctly, it's called something along the lines of off-world defense simulations, and they utilize the Unreal Engine to simulate combat situations, which they sell as information as a program to various different military forces. So there's a revenue stream that exists there for them, whereas a game like Hell Let Loose, it's literally just Hell Let Loose. Now, I'm hoping we hear some news about the British faction fairly early on in 2022. It feels as though although Hell Let Loose released on console and that was a big thing for that platform, generally speaking, we kind of need an influx of information and content on PC, and of course on consoles as well, where they're trying to catch up to the game. And I think it's just one of those things really where Hell Let Loose definitely thrives on content releases. It's a bit like Squad, where the player numbers rise and fall in relation to how much new content there is to digest. And unlike Squad and Postscriptum, Hell Let Loose only really has like two factions, the US and the Germans, and that's actually quite tiresome, and it does get a little bit boring in places. So finally mixing that up with the British, Canadians, or Pacific factions is actually going to make quite a staggering difference to the variety in game, and something that I think a lot of us want to see. So folks, that's about it from this video today on Hell Let Loose. I just wanted to cover this seemingly big growth spurt that Hell Let Loose is going to undertake in 2022. It's something that I think is incredibly popular right now, even though people don't realize it. It seems to be doing very, very well on console, and I think it's really inevitable that Hell Let Loose continues to grow in 2022 and into the early parts of 2023. Now, let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. What are you looking forward to in 2022? And I'll catch you guys in the next video.